You're listening to the Waypoint TV Podcast Network, brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast, brought to you by Huntworth. Huntworth gear for all types of weather, all types of terrain, all types of budgets. It's clothing that just works. Check them out at huntworthgear.com. Holy cow, guys. We are here in Michigan 15 days. And if you're listening to this on the 16th, it'll be the 16 days into the season. But man, what an amazing season it's been so far. In the Patreon group, deer are dying left and right. We got some buddies. I mean, if you look at that buck that Jake Bush just killed, Corey killed that one out in Kansas. But our Patreon group is killing it. Like I said on the last podcast, we've already got a few bucks down. Our bow hunting league team now has a buck and 3 does, and we're currently trying to work on that. But man, our Patreon hunt, we ended up killing 8 deer this year. And I think everybody saw a deer. I think everybody had encounters, and we'll get to all that on the next episode. There's a little bit of the Patreon hunt stuff in here because of the way that my season is going. And man, the season is moving fast. We're getting into some of the good stuff now. We're kind of this cold front, this cold weather. It starts to feel like fall, starts to feel like hunting season. And, man, we were just having a blast over here. I'm just talking with John. He is probably I'd say he's probably like 75% in for this trip to the UP. He's really going to try and make it work. And that means that he is very nearly finished building this house, and we'll get to hunt, kind of get back into the some semblance of normalcy here in the podcast and things like that. So that's pretty awesome. But yeah, what an excellent camp. And we got to give a shout out. We got a new Patreon, Kevin Defoe, out of Howard City. So welcome to the group. Get in that Marco Polo group. This is the best time of year. Guys are in the trees. You're getting to track. You're getting to see real-time sits, see how guys set up, all that stuff. Really a freaking special group that we have there. And yeah, and if you're not checking out Latitude Grit, you guys need to go over on YouTube and check that out right now. And you can use our code with Latitude. Like I say, I think it's 15% off. I got to talk to those guys. But that is code BHC there. Spartan Forge let us use their Blue Forest tracker. We could see everybody's pins up at camp, and they're continually improving that. I'm for the past, I don't know, 5-6 years, we've been using Spartan Forge, and it just continually keeps getting better. And I feel like this year they're knocking it out of the park with the LiDAR and just all of the ease of use, simple features, switching back and forth on the maps, all that stuff. And then the desktop stuff is incredible as well. You can save 25% using code Bowhunter. You got to go online, do that, sign up online. But, our partners that we're working with are just incredible. Genesis 3D Austin was up at camp, and he's got a code for the Patreon. But I think everybody in camp was using something from Genesis 3D. And if there's a hole in your game, or there's something where you're like, man, I wish I had this little doodad or trinket to make my hunting easier, gear straps, stick stack, carry your sticks up the tree, carry platform up the tree, tree stand hangers, all sorts of stuff. Check them out, Genesis 3D. And our friends over at Canati and Zingers, I think just about all the deer that were killed up there, except for Mapes, but we're getting him some Canatis. Were killed with a Zinger or a Canati or something like that. So I don't think Dave's off the Canati train, but regardless, those guys are incredible over there. check them out. Up in the UP, we're going up there for the land of the lucky buck where we can use that stuff. And, obviously Huntworth, they're closed. So this weekend I basically wore the Durham pants, the Elkins vest, and that Grayling hoodie. That was basically everything that I wore for the entire first 2 weeks of the season. So definitely go over there, check that out. They have a sale going on right now, 25% off. So they're having their rut sale. I think the code is RUT25. So go over there and check that out at huntworthgear.com. But this podcast, I brought on Byron Horton from the Whitetail Experience. He and I have been going back and forth talking about this trad stuff for the last couple of years. And after I killed that first buck this year, after I got that first kill with the longbow, he was calling me, asking me questions. So I didn't think that there was anybody better to have on the podcast to kind of facilitate the questions, because he's interested in learning on how all this has kind of played out. So I think you guys are going to enjoy this one, especially if you've been following along with my journey, chasing things with a trad bow like an idiot. But as always, thanks for listening. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And as always, thanks for listening. All right, everybody, Adam back with another episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. And just coming home from our Patreon hunt, and we're going to do a podcast on that later on. But a lot had happened leading up to the Patreon hunt and then into the Patreon hunt with my season. And I kind of wanted to recap that a little bit. And so I brought on here Byron Horton from the Whitetail Experience. And Byron and I have been going back and forth, I feel like, for a couple of years now about, really, do we want to do this trad thing? How are we going to do it? When are we going to do it? What is the quote unquote like parameters surrounding like what kind of deer we're going to shoot, when are we going to take the bow out, what's going to happen with that. So I thought, what better person to bring on here to kind of like recap this and kind of like ask the questions, because he's somewhat vested in it on his own journey. And I'll tell you, Byron, last year at the Mobile Hunter Expo, when you came up to me and you're like, hey, I want to talk to you. And you're like, about this trad thing, like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I am like such a novice at this. I'm like, why is somebody asking me questions on this? So, and then after I had shot my deer there, you messaged me and you're like, hey, I got a question. And I'm thinking it's like about like a podcast or like a piece of gear or something. You're like, or just tell me how you did this. Like, what's going on? So, I kind of want to go at it from that angle on this one. How are you doing today, Byron? Where are you at in your season currently?
So I've been in the woods a decent amount here the second half of last week and the weekend. And obviously, like, we've got a pretty good front pushing through, and there's some projected temps in the 30s overnights. So, like, definitely anticipation. There's a little bit of lack of buck sign in some of my areas currently. And so, like, I will give Jake Hofer this term. This is like the sign making cold front, hopefully, to help you figure out the plan going forward. But I'll get in the woods, I think, 2 days this second half of the week. And yeah, I had another debacle here with the stick bow last week. So good lessons to learn.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, I guess I guess I'll let you take it from the like my first hunt and questions from the beginning of the season, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. So I think big picture, taking the stick bow every hunt, no matter what. Did you have any parameters of not taking it, or what was the context there?
Well, so my buddy Jake and I had been saying all summer long, like, ever since TAC, we're like, so we saw Brian from Prime, and he's got these Hey Dudes that have some Axis fur like on the top of them that he had made. And he said, everybody asks him if it's a fawn because it's got spots, you know? And then Jake and I just kind of took that one further, and we said, we're going to shoot every fawn that we see in hopes to making some Hey Dudes. And we're like, we should do it with the stick bow, because then no one will care. It'll be just a funny thing, and it'll give us a reason to take the stick bow out. So then, you know, fast forward from tack, then I went right around that same time. I went to Montana bear hunting, and then I came back, and then it was tack. So I had to get my bow ready. And then everything was gearing up to go to Colorado for elk hunt. So I brought the compound, got the compound set up there. And like all my stuff was in the trailer, and it was already in my head that we were going to do the stick bow thing. And guys that have been successful, or guys that have been like quote unquote like mentoring me, have said, you know, I've just been doing it when our gun season hits in November 15th. So I'm hunting pressured deer with no foliage. And they're like, you are really handicapping yourself. You need to start early season. So I thought, okay, well, I'll start early season. And then I've got a hunt coming up here in the UP, which is the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, the end of October. And that was going to be like a half and half. That was going to be like the tipping point where I was going to go to the compound, because up there, like baiting is legal. We have a big piece of property that's, you know, somewhat managed, but I control all of the, you know, I have a lot more control over the situation as far as like where there's other hunters, what's going on. So I thought, in a controlled environment, I can get my first kill with the stick bow there, and then I can transition. So then, you know, I get back home from Colorado. I had to work a few days. I had one day off, worked 3 or 4 more days, and then went up to our Patreon hunt. So I was like, well, I'll just go out with the stick bow on that one day, and that will be it. And I ended up shooting a lot of times.
All right. So you did preseason, you said, okay, when I get back from Colorado, like, let's do this. You've been shooting for like 2 years or 2 full summers. Like, definitely. I remember I asked you about animal shapes versus dots, and you had figured some of that stuff out. I feel like almost a year ago then. So going into your doe kill, from setup to anticipation.
I killed the 7-point before I killed the doe kill. So.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay. So, but on that hunt, setup distance, big axle to axle or tip to tip is another thought I have. And I feel like level of excitement, right? Like twig snaps, everything's fair game. I think is where you stood. So that's a different vibe in the deer woods. Walk us through that first hunt, from probably setup to distance of shot to angle, and then that feeling of, yeah, I'm picking this stick bow up for real for the first time, and then walk us through those final 10 seconds.
Well, it was a lot of seconds, but I walked out there, and like my father, like I was hunting behind my father-in-law's house, and he's got a camera out there, and there's tons of bucks, tons of deer in there. And there is every year. There's acorns raining down everywhere. He's got a water hole set up. He's got a horizontal rub that hasn't got any use out of it, but he's like trying to, you know, put some things in place. But there's this big ladder stand, and just the way that it was set up and the way that the wind was, everything, that wasn't right. I wouldn't have sat there anyways, but it just wasn't where I needed to be. There's a scrape up on the ridge. And so I literally, and from me doing the podcast so much and having these conversations so often, you know, I've said it before, like I walk into the woods, no matter where I go, like what would Jake Bush be looking at? What would Dan Infalt be doing? What would Andy May be thinking? And in this particular case, it's kind of like the Jason Samkowiak, right? He goes in, he looks for these pinches, and he says he'll stand there for 15 minutes, like trying to pick out the perfect tree, because that could be the difference between, you know, having something in your way, moving that big old bow around, getting picked off, any of that stuff. So I walked around that stand and walked up right on the windward side of the ridge, or the leeward side of the ridge rather. And, I just stood there for like 5 minutes, and there was a bunch of pole trees, but none of them had any cover. And there was a scrape like right in the middle. So I was like, I know I have to be downwind of that scrape. And there's a big runway coming into it. So I found one tree that had some cover that just kind of, it didn't really allow me to tuck in that great, but there was branches up there and there were still leaves on the branches. So at least I wouldn't be stuck out like a sore thumb. So I get up the tree and it wasn't very long. It was probably, and I didn't even get set up until like 5:15. And
did you take a stand or did you take a saddle?
Saddle. Yep. And, so I've got that stand to hunt hybrid with, and I've shot off it in the backyard, and I'm pretty comfortable with it, but I haven't set it up at height yet. And this was really haphazard. Like I was telling you before, in like taking my totes and like getting stuff ready for like bear hunting, like I removed everything from here, and then going to elk hunting, like I removed the stuff I didn't need for bear, and then I put it in the elk hunting tote. And so I got all my stuff ready, and I didn't have a gear hanger strap. Like I couldn't find it. So I ended up using a cam buckle strap and a 3D printed bow hook.
Boat Trader is America's largest boating marketplace with over 100,000 boats to choose from. We offer simple, comprehensive solutions for those looking to sell, find, and finance new or used boats. Visit BoatTrader.com to get started.
Whether you're just looking to stay warm during a hunt or need maximum concealment, the clothing you wear can make or break a hunt. At MidwayUSA.com, we understand hunting clothing has come a long way with more meticulously crafted camo patterns, advanced scent control technologies, and weatherproof options to withstand the elements. Hunters have to wait until their favorite season, but shouldn't wait on gear, which is why Midway USA offers super fast shipping. When you're ready for your next system, log on to MidwayUSA.com.
In the loops, tightened down, and then I had my 360 camera, which I didn't have on my actual strap, wherever it may be. There is a 3D printed thing from Genesis 3D where you screw on the selfie stick and it hangs out there. Well, I didn't have that, so this was just in my backpack on the backside of the tree, and I had a deer go by at like probably right about 6 o'clock, like at like 80 yards. So in my mind, this is not like a slam dunk hunt. This is like, it's very, very haphazard. I mean, I'm out there in a pair of Wranglers, brown sweatshirt and a camo vest and a hat. Like, it's not like I'm like, in a leafy suit or anything. This is just kind of like literally the first sit of the year in the whitetail woods. I actually had bought my license like 20 minutes before I got over there. Like I dropped my daughter off and I was like, oh man, I need to get a license. So I went and got my license, got in the tree. And then I heard some blue jays going far off, and then the blue jays were closer. And then I heard those twig snaps and everything. And then out comes this first buck. And then the second buck comes out, and they came right up to the point of the ridge, which was probably like 30 yards from me. And they're like just staring bullets at that ladder stand. So for all of you guys who just hunt the same stand and everything, and you think I got these deer on camera, they're in there, they're comfortable. And my father-in-law, he'll tell you, he's like, they're not looking in that stand. They're just, I'm like, I saw them. That's exactly what they were doing. And then the buck that I shot, he walked by at like 22 yards, like pretty much through one of the openings that I would have liked to shoot through. But there was like one or two like little twigs, like where with a compound you'd be like, oh, that's not a big deal. I could definitely shoot there. Well, I feel like and especially now after having shot at a lot of deer, I mean, I've shot at the same deer a lot of times, I guess. I shot at a lot of deer. That my level of accuracy is pretty good, but my precision is not. So I've hit a lot of branches.
Live target think the same. No matter the weapon, I feel like live targets are not the same as punching bags and spots.
Well, but what I mean is by that is like with a compound, I know I can shoot underneath that branch. I'm fairly confident. But with the stick bow, I don't necessarily know the arc of the arrow as well as I do. And so that's led to a lot of branches to this point. So I just let him walk by at like 20, 22 yards or so. And then they were like kind of doing like figure eights out in front of me, just feeding on acorns and messing around. And the smaller of the two bucks, he came up and I posted that one on Instagram. he walked right up the ridge, and I felt like I made like a good shot. I did everything like in the process in my head, like different than a compound. Like with a compound, I feel like I freak out. I'm like, oh my God, I need to make a shot. Like I have to, don't let him get away. And this one I was like, no, like this is a really good opportunity. Like don't mess it up. Like just, pull through your shot, make a good shot. And I did that, and I shot right over his back. He ducked, and I shot right over his back. And so he flops over to my side of the ridge. Well, the other one was on the other side of the ridge. And so I'm watching this deer, and I guess that bow is so quiet, and it's like not as violent, I guess, like when a compound goes off, that these deer, like they're just looking around trying to figure out, like, did a stick fall or something like that. They're not really keyed in to me at all. And so the other one walks right up to the top of the ridge. So I just knock another arrow, and I turn around, and I just center punch this branch, and it went, my arrow went like literally straight down, very violent. And that deer kind of like jumped, and he looked left and right, but he didn't move anywhere. He just stayed there. So I just knocked another arrow. And then at this point, like, I had knocked the branch out of the way. That was the problem.
Lane creator.
And I felt like, form wise, like I tried to make a good shot, but I didn't follow that arrow, and I wasn't shooting lighted knocks or anything. So I didn't even know that I hit that deer. I shot, and I heard the pop, but it didn't sound like it hit a tree, and it didn't sound like I hit a brush pile like I did when I missed the first one. And then he ran off, and he ran down the ridge and went up, and I swear that I saw him fall over. And I said out loud, there's no frickin' way that just happened. Got my binos up, but he wasn't like he fell over like white side towards me. So there was nothing to pick up, and it was right at like dark. There was no kick in, there was no anything. So, and that was my last broadhead. So I text my father-in-law that I'm out of arrows, and he's like, what, are you kidding me? He's like, did you hit anything? And I'm like, I don't know, that last one was promising, but I still don't know.
Yeah.
So then I waited like 15 minutes or so. I got down, found my 2 arrows that I knew where they were at, and the other one I couldn't find, and I turned, and there was like a 2-foot spot of blood. And I was like, okay, well, that's good. So I just sat my stuff down, went and got my father-in-law. We walked out there with a spotlight and found my arrow, clean pass through, and the deer was piled up like 80 yards away, 100 yards away maybe. So
nice. Can't beat it. Total feeling of accomplishment, more excitement than walking up on some of the bucks you might have shot with a compound in the last 3 to 5 years? Or just saying.
So the last 2 bucks that I've killed, the one I killed in Kansas, I just feel like I stumbled in there. I saw him. I called him over. I missed him by a mile. I hit a branch, and he stayed there, and I shot him. And I felt accomplished, but I felt like it was like too easy. Like it's not supposed to happen like that. And I kind of feel like that on this one, that it was like fish in a barrel. Like these deer let me shoot at them 3 times. Like I don't feel like that is supposed to, like I feel like too many things lined up. I felt like, I mean, it's super cool. But I'm like torn in the sense of like they're not supposed to do that. Like it was like, I didn't like, and I'm fully okay with like the rest of this sentence, but I want you to know that this is something that I think about. It's like, I didn't like walk back into this spot that I found, and it was, all these things like lined up. It was like, I just went out, sat on the ridge behind the house and shot one like I was 12 years old. And so it's just a really weird, like, connect the dots. And it almost makes me feel like, why did I put this off for so long? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like a little bit of lack of adventure, a little bit of lack of,
yeah. But I think it's super cool that I was able to do it, but it's just, I really thought it would be much more difficult, or that I would feel something different, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's fair. Now let me ask this, because we know you've killed a couple more. Does that feeling, did that feeling change on maybe some of the others where, like, I don't know, maybe, and we'll get to these stories, but maybe you picked the spot phenomenally, you made a good first shot, there was maybe a little bit more sense of adventure behind it?
So the second one, I shot a doe, and we had driven around the night before. Like, we went and checked some spots, and then it was like literally like prime time driving around, like looking for deer, seeing where they were crossing the road, like making a plan. And I want to I want to emphasize this just because, like, I've talked about it so much, I feel like, but when I've said we need to start hunting like in our own state, like we hunt out of state, which is not going to like the convenient spot, going to like where there's the sign, where there's the deer, like where you have a high probability of success, instead of just like hoping or going on historical data or something like that. Like, and all that works at times if you have all the right conditions and things like that. But if you're just going on a whim because I know I should go here, but this spot is closer and there's a chance because I'm in the woods, so there's always a chance. So instead of just going and trying to go somewhere blind, we were driving around looking for hot deer sign, actual deer sightings activity. And we drove by this spot that was like right off the road. And when I mean right off the road, it was 100 yards from the road. And there was 4 or 5 deer out feeding underneath these trees. So noted, right? So we drive around. Next, I had to leave that night, go home. I had to take, just like this morning, I had to take my daughter to the dentist, come back. And on my way back up, I drove over there and I went and looked. And like, if you've ever listened to Warren Womack, who I feel like I said he's like my idol with the stick bow, because when I had him on the podcast and I asked him like about his bow setup and his arrows, he goes, I got a quiver full of mismatched arrows. They all shoot good enough. He said, I can't outshoot, like my level of skill isn't it. The arrow doesn't matter as far as, and he wasn't saying he was so good. He was saying that he was good enough to make those arrows go where they needed, but it didn't have anything to do with like the arrow or the bow, because the accuracy was only so great on that. So it made me think about just like putting in the reps instead of like worrying about the arrow flight or any of that sort of stuff. But he also says like that, walk until you find that feed tree. And when you find that feed tree, you'll know. And so this was like a lone oak tree in the middle of a field that they had just like brush hogged. And the entire circumference, probably 40 yards of how big this tree like took up. I mean, maybe it wasn't that big, but it was 20 yards for sure. Was all like freshly chewed oak leaves, acorn caps, and acorns. And there was a maple tree next to it that had like 9 trunks. And so I got up there. I think I went and did some scouting with my father-in-law, came back, and like everybody was gone from camp. So I thought, well, I'm going to go there with the stick bow, and I'm fairly certain that there's going to be a deer coming in. And I was trying to get some people, like the one guy up there that was doing all the videoing and stuff. I was like, you should cut, I was like, where are you hunting? I'm going to go over here. It's going to be, a sure thing. And he was like, oh, I'm going to go over here. And I was like, oh, okay. So I go in there, and I kid you not, like I got in there and we had like a really weird wind. I got into the trees that I wanted to get to, and the wind seemed okay for that maple. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get in that maple. And I got into the crotch of it, 1 stick high, put up my platform, did a little interview, said like, hey, this is where I'm at. And literally I looked up, it was 4:55, and 2 deer come running across the field and start feeding. like that fast. And they fed in there for 10 minutes. And there was a button buck and a big doe. And the doe comes over and gets in. She was at like 16 yards. And I go to pick my bow up. And I had already done all this. And one of the things I told you on the phone was why I think I was successful, or what helped me before with that big bow, was making sure to draw ahead of time so that I could get the bow off the hook, so that I could do all these things. So I did all that and I got the bow off the hook. And when I went to draw it, there was this, like, something was rubbing against the tree. Like there was like this, and at that distance with no wind, it was like, it might well have been a bullhorn. And so she like looked up and then she went back to feeding. I waited a second. I tried it again and same thing. And I'm like looking at my bow. I can't figure out what's going on. So then the third time, like, she had me and I made the worst shot you could ever imagine. And I know this because I tried to shoot a turkey before on video and I did the exact same thing. As I got to like half draw, it made that noise and she looked at me and then she put her head down and I like tried to push the bow out with my left hand to get to full draw and move my nose in so that I got to the anchor. And then that I got to the anchor with like the worst possible form, and the arrow went boom, and it just like kind of arced over her back and she ducked it by a mile and they ran off. Well, after like reevaluating what had happened, I had my tether height really high and the angle was really steep. And when I was rotating around the tree, the tether scraped against the bark and it had some moss on it, like that old crunchy moss. Mm-hmm. And that's what was making the noise. So then I readjusted. I moved my tether like all the way down, like right across from my belly button there. And I was sitting up there and like, that was a win. Like I wasn't kicking myself. I was kicking myself for making a poor shot, like not making good choices as far as my shot. But again, it was, I watched these deer for 10 minutes inside of 30 yards back and forth. And I could have, taken shots at that button buck all day long, but I was like, there's no hurry. I have a good wind. Like, just let them come. And then I messed it up. And then 30 minutes later, they come right back out. And that's what I mean. It's like 12 years old, right? Like I have all these stories of my friends, like when baiting used to be legal in Michigan, they would shoot, the arrow would be down there, the deer would run off, they'd wait 10 minutes, the deer would come back in, they'd shoot, miss, the deer would run off, and they'd empty their quivers, and they'd have to get down, collect their arrows, come back up. And so that's why it's like, I don't know how to feel about this, because I feel like we tell ourselves so often that you only get one chance and this is what's going to happen and blah, blah, blah. And so anyways, they came back in and I had a spot picked out. She was 21 yards away and I focused on making a good shot, having good form, but I also aimed really low. Like I let it go, like I want to say like under her belly, and she ducked right into it. And I felt really comfortable about the shot. Like that video was good. Shot looked good. The shot looked better than it actually was. Like, not that it was a bad shot, but it looked like it was right in the pocket, and she actually ducked and whirled, so it went in like middle of the guts and out dead center of the ribs. So it was like all the guts, center punch the liver, out one lung. And there was no blood whatsoever. I shot her with a single bevel, but she'd run over to the corner of this field and her tail was flicking really hard, tail down. And then I lost her. And then the button buck that she was with was back there pacing for like 5 minutes back and forth in the same spot. So I was like, she's probably right there. But there was probably like over an hour left of light. And I just got down and got out of the tree because I didn't want to have a whole bunch of deer surround me. And we had a whole week's worth of hunting left almost. So I wanted to get out of there and leave it for the next guy. And then she did. She only went 100 yards and piled up on that one. So,
yeah. So you kind of felt like it was too easy, but like one great shot, right? 21 yards with the stick. That's a poke, and single arrow execution, if you will, which like your last debacle, not as smooth. I mean, dude, when you walked up on this doe and you seen her white belly, like, I don't know, this one sounds a little cool. Like,
yeah. Well, but it was like one of those things too, where like there was no blood like whatsoever. There was just like little specks of blood. So I was like, we just walked over to like where I saw her. Like we looked around for a while, and they ended up getting on blood, but it was just like little tiny sprays of blood, like little specks. And
fishing like a local isn't just about catching fish. It's about connecting with the environment and the people who call it home. It's about hearing the stories and traditions that have been passed down for generations and sharing unforgettable moments with the people you meet along the way. Fishing like a local is having an experience that stays with you forever. And with Fishing Booker, you can experience it too, no matter where you are. Discover your next adventure on Fishing Booker.
Midway USA brand product designers have one straightforward goal: develop high-quality, technically sound products and deliver them to customers at reasonable prices. If you are immersed in the shooting sports industry and pay close attention to every single detail, you know our products are built right and stand up to everyday use. Who has shooting mats and range bag systems to hunting clothing and just about everything for the outdoors? Log on and shop 24/7 with super fast shipping. MidwayUSA.com.
You know, I was thinking, man, I really hope that she's right here where she's supposed to be. So that was cool. I mean, so that was 2 sits this year. That was my first 2 sits this year. I had fired 5 arrows and killed 2 deer. And I technically kind of like saw both of them go down. I mean, I saw the last time they were standing. So, you know, it was cool, but I mean, it's just so funny because my father-in-law had forgotten some stuff at the house. And when he came up to camp, he's like, I hope you brought your traditional bow because both of your compounds are laying there right next to the door. And I said, yeah, you know, it'll be fun. And they're joking around. And I said, well, you know, I'm pretty much an expert with it right now. And his buddy that was up there, he did the same thing. The first time he ever hunted, he shot one with a recurve, like when he's 12 years old, standing on a limb. And he's like, I missed the next 7. Like, so it took a long time to get the next one. So when I short draw shot over the top of that doe the first time, I was like, all right, 6 more and then we'll get one, you know? And so
now in NBA Jam status, you're heating up, right?
Yeah. So it was really cool. And that was at camp with all the, you know, there was a lot of guys there. There were guys that were showing up in camp, and to be able to like break the ice for the camp and like do it with your buddies. And then, you know, there's all
huge morale boost.
Well, but it's also like the, you know, I don't know if the world's worst bow hunter can do it with this stupid equipment, then I can do it too, you know. Encouraging.
Yeah, step it up, boys.
So
I love it.
But that one was.
There is something. We just did a deer camp. The first. Yeah.
No, I was going to say that one was though. One of the guys asked me like, "What was your confidence level going into that sit that you were going to have a deer in trad bow range?" And I said 100%. Like I knew for a fact that was going to happen. Not that I was going to shoot one, like, you know, that I'm not in that level, but I knew for a fact that I would get an opportunity. So
that's kind of where I'm struggling here on my 0 for 3 track record is like, if I can look at a spot, maybe I seem to be able to pick good trails for the stick bow encounter, but execution of draw, anchor release, there's been a couple learning curves, and that trend continued. Was that last Wednesday? Where picked the right trail, and here she came. And true, she came in at dark 30, like it was barely legal. And I kept looking single deer. I'm looking for a 4-pointer that I don't want to shoot. And by the time she had come in, I probably should have been in a little bit more of pick your shot mode versus where's the spikes on top of that head. And yeah, she busted me kind of like, not even like getting to draw, maybe tension on the string type movement. Like, and so I've been busted twice on maybe getting a fourth of the way back. And so, yeah, I think looking at it, I got to start drawing, I think, a touch earlier, but let's move on to kill number 3 of the year.
Well, I didn't kill the third one.
Okay.
I missed that one. Now that one would have been like accomplishment status, because for the last 2 years we had cameras in this ridge system, and there's always good bucks in there. There's scrapes, rubs, all that stuff. And they're fairly predictable until the pressure hits. And then as soon as the pressure hits, then you stop getting them on camera. And so it's like the first couple days of the season, like you feel like you could kill one in there pretty easy on the right wind. And after that, then, you know, you got to be there. So we didn't have any cameras in there this year, hadn't even walked in there at all. And I went in there with my buddy, and I said, man, with the wind tomorrow and the way that I think these deer are bedding in there, we should go in there. There's like a community scrape here, but I'm like, if you sit right here, this is how they come back to bed. And so if you can get just off the wind and we're accessing properly, like we have a good opportunity to kill a buck in there. And he gets in there, gets set up just fine. I walked to where there's normally a scrape, and there wasn't a scrape. So I was like kind of looking around to like where I needed to be. And then I backed up a little bit, and there was a scrape underneath a different tree. So I was like, oh, okay, this is the spot. Well, the way that they enter in there was going to be really difficult for me to get a shot from the tree that I had picked. It was, and I think when you were saying like that you're getting picked, one of the things that I have started to do now is like, I sent you the video of this one and you said, okay, made the saddle move there. I'm hidden all the way up until I decide that I'm going to draw. And then I kind of like come around and that's, I think that's the one thing that I've been doing better is trying to be like very obscured until, so I had to like swing around on this deer because I was thinking they were going to come like straight directly at me being in a saddle. Like, so I'd be behind the tree and then they would have to work into the scrape and curl around. So it's going to be a little bit dicey. And we're hunting in the area. So we set up our deer camp where we're right on the border of antler point restrictions. So if you want to hunt bucks or you want to have opportunity at a good buck, north is where the APRs are. But if you're coming from out of state or you just want to shoot a deer and you don't want to be like hemmed up by, oh man, I had an opportunity, but the deer was too close or, you know, but it was the wrong deer, you can hunt to the south. Well, the night prior we had hunted to the north. And so it had to be 3 on the side. So I'm sitting there and it was a really cool morning. Like the fog was coming up. It was, you know, I was sitting like across from this like grass marsh thinking here's going to be a set of antlers coming across or something, or, you know, you see a deer picking their way across and that didn't happen. But all of a sudden I just saw a deer and I'm set up. This scrape is 12 yards in front of me. So it's right there, like almost, you know, you feel like directly below you. And here comes this set of antlers and it's a 4-point. And I was like, oh man, too small to shoot, you know? So I let him come in and he's like dinking around. And then I'm like, wait a minute, I can shoot him. Like I'm south of the line. So I get my bow and it was funny because one of the guys that's been helping me with shooting the trad bow and answering the questions and stuff, he was commenting on that doe that I shot, how my form was really good, like in my follow through. And so I watched this shot a whole bunch of times, and I feel like I had a lot of follow through. Like I feel like I drew like 3/4, and I waited, and then I went back to anchor, and then I still pulled through, and my hand was behind my head. But my dad had always said, and I guess I only ever thought about it like on the bigger bucks that I've shot. Like when there's been bigger bucks in front of me, I always say to myself, stop looking at their antlers, because my dad had a buddy who would always shoot through the antlers. He would, that's what he would be focused on. You know, he's going through all of his motions and he shoots through the antlers. So that's the only thing I can think that happened. Cause this deer was, I don't know. I would venture to guess that it was like a 2-year-old 4-point, because it was a decent rack deer, but maybe because it was so close, it looked really big. And it was like one of these things where like, I think I got lost in my head. Like, I can't miss this deer. He's so close. I mean, hell, I've already killed 2 with this thing, and they were further away than this. Like, he has zero idea that I'm here. He's not been alerted at all. And, so I draw back and I shoot right in front of his face. Like, and I was like, I shot him through the antlers. And I thought I heard my arrow, like nick his antlers. And I'm like, oh my God, this is wild. So he runs off and he still doesn't know that I'm there. I knock another arrow. He goes and he comes by at like 30. And I'm like, I can make that shot. So I draw back and I shoot, hit a branch, and it goes like into orbit. And I see the arrow go way up and way down. And so I see that it's like over there, like by the ridge or something. It's got to be over there. So I sit there and I wait like 15 minutes or so. I look at the Insta360 video and I see that it like went right across, like right in front of his face. And I was like, you are such an idiot. And I range my arrow. My arrow is at 14 yards. And, you know, you're just sitting there. Well, then all of a sudden 15 minutes later, I pick up movement up on the ridge, and it's a buck, you know, and I get in the binoculars, and this buck, it looks like this buck is like just come out of velvet. He's got like bloody antlers and like, you know, dark face, you know, it's just, I'm like, what in the world? And so I watch him for a little bit, and then he just dips over the other side of the ridge, I'm assuming. So I wait another 15 minutes or so. So spend like a half hour back up. Oh, I leave my stuff, because I'm like, this is amazing. You know, this is the spot right here. Like I can, you know, I don't think I scared that deer off enough. You know, maybe he'll come back, but there's other bucks in the area. I know it. There's a hot scrape right here. So I get down, look at my arrow, and my arrow's completely clean. So nothing on the broadhead. There's nothing on the fletchings. There's nothing on the shaft. There's nothing. Clean miss. I go up and I'm looking in the brush for my arrow, and I'm get up on the trail and I'm looking for my arrow, and I walk, and then there's blood. And I'm like, what in the hell? And I walk another 10 feet and there's this like giant spot of blood. And I'm like, and I had heard a deer like blowing, and I thought it was like back behind me on like one of these other finger ridges. And I'm like trying to figure it out. And I'm like, somebody else shot this buck, and it came down the ridge, like right to me. And like, so I'm just waiting there. I'm like, somebody's going to come along tracking this buck, and maybe it's a guy from our camp. Maybe it's something. And I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So, my buddy that I was hunting with was texting me that he was going to go to the truck. And I'm like, just come over here to me. Like, you're not going to believe this. So he gets over there. I tell him what happened. And, you know, we're standing there, and I show him the video, and he's like, I think you hit that deer in the face. He's like, I think you hit that deer in the nose. And he's like, I think that's your deer. And that blowing that you heard was like that deer had like blood in its nose, because there was blood sprayed everywhere. And it didn't go back down the ridge. It kind of went back down like where the deer ran up after I missed him the second time. So we tracked the deer like, I don't know, 200-300 yards into the swamp, back and forth, and it was just like snotty, like really thin, like it was like muscle blood and then like snot. And so I'm pretty sure I'm pretty sure what happened shooting just a 2-blade is that just the one blade like went across his snout or something. And then it was only the blade of the broadhead. And so then when it buried in the ground and I pulled it out, it wiped it all off.
Sure.
So it was just the craziest thing, but like
it wouldn't have anything on the arrow either.
No. But like in my mind, like when I walked up there, I'm like, somebody else shot a buck that like came right here. So that's the only thing that I can imagine that happened. So I don't know, that was a bummer, but that would have been, you know, we get 2 buck tags in Michigan. I'd have been tagged out on bucks in
your first trad season
in the span of a week.
October 15th. Yeah. Before the half of the month.
Sub 100 inches total also on these bucks.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. So three encounters, arrows released.
So I
I
had 4 sits and I shot 7 arrows.
Yeah. So going into your next hunt, a combination of these 3 encounters, is there some sort of either add to your checklist or 2 or 3 things that you do now when picking out a tree and setting up that you're like, okay, because I've learned a few things from actually releasing arrows on deer, I need to do this a little either better or be more conscious of?
So I'm always looking, and I do this anyway, but I think it's more important because the deer have to be a lot closer, is I'm always looking at my back cover. Like the back cover, if I don't have any back cover or anything, it doesn't matter how good the spot is, it's not going to be good. Because I'm not climbing super high, and I'm not going to try and shoot straight down with this bow. So I've been basically about 12 feet high every time. So still kind of in that understory brush. And then I make sure out in front of me, like outside of arm's distance, there's no branches or anything. And that goes all the way up above me too, which is hard to do because you feel like you want to get tucked in. But I think, like, at least for me with a compound, I can lean back, you know, and kind of shoot away. But with the stick bow, I'm always leaning forward. I mean, and I think that's one thing that I do better with the stick bow is, like, you know, like the pivot at your hips instead of like just try and shoot down like that. Like I feel like that's where we make a lot of mistakes with our compound bows, and everybody says it and everybody knows it and everybody says, oh yeah, I'm going to remember that. And we still screw it up. But I think because that bow is so big, and the way that there is like a true push pull there, because there's no let off. So you're not,
it's not just getting.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but the out in front of me, I think, is really important. Is what I do to set up. And like, even on that last one, I think was the one that was most telling was like, the deer came from 100%, like 90 degrees differently than the way that I thought that deer would come into that spot. And my setup was still good enough because I was up there hidden. I had good like 360 back cover or cover, you know. I think that's what I've looked for. And it's funny because it completely goes back to like last year when I had that 100-inch buck or whatever out in front of me when I was just on my platform on the ground in the snow. There was no trees that I could get in that would have afforded me any sort of back cover. And so that's why I was on the ground. And I think that is more important than anything, at least, you know, because I'm so freaking good at this, right?
Right. Right. Well, 1.5 seasons in.
Yeah. Well, but I also think that, like, I was talking to my buddy last night, and I said, I think probably like that season or two of trying to hunt them in the snow or like when there's no foliage has made it easier for me to do it when there is foliage, because it's like, oh man, they don't even see you. Like it's a totally different game, but I still have that same like mentality of like trying to have those, like, I guess everything is like magnified as far as like the slow movements and stuff. Like I feel like with the compound, we're kind of like haphazard of like, I'll just pick up the bow and draw. Like
you can draw it at when he's 25 yards behind a tree coming your way, and now he's worked into 17, 18, and you're already main movement's done. Like, and now you're got an aiming system to get the arrow. Yeah, that's been a tough part is you can't draw early now.
Yeah, and in picking the right time like to draw is, I don't know, with the exception of the last one, like the other ones have been feeding, so it's been kind of easy. Like I feel like where you'll press it with the compound because you're already at full draw, and you're like, I know this arrow is going to get there really fast. So like they don't have to turn their head or do anything. Like when you feel comfortable, when you settle, and that's where that like comes in, you know. But I feel like with the stick bow, like you alert them and it's like that arrow goes off and it's like, like it's not getting there immediately. So I've just been waiting for them to be like, go back to being comfortable, you know?
Them bows though are so quiet. Like until you shoot next to somebody with a stick, if you just pick it up and shoot it, that noise is going off right in your face every time. But like, Adam, I can hand you a bow and literally be standing right next to you and you go, oh shit. That's like, they just do not make a lot of noise.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's been super fun. And then to be honest with you, without talking to you, like I probably would have brought my compound up there to camp and hunted with a compound, but you're like, so you going to stick with it or what? And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I guess like, I don't know.
You have to, at least I don't know.
It was hilarious though. I mean, cause I don't know. I feel like you know me well enough to know my personality isn't like, well, I'm just so confident I'm just going to walk out there and like be slaying dragons with this thing. Like, no way. Like every time it was like, I can't believe that this like, I can't tell you. Well, I think one of the better quotes was after I shot the first one, my buddy's like, you had a year's worth of shooting in one sit. And so like, I've literally taken now 7 shots in 5 sits like that. How many shots did you take last year? I mean, nobody does that.
Yeah. Yeah. two arrows with the compound.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So
yeah,
and I guess that's the conversation that, you know, I'm trying to have with you, is because you guys have the one buck tag. And so it's like, what are your parameters? What are you shooting? But I think you probably think in your mind.
At Midway USA, we know the AR-15 is one of the most popular rifles in modern American history. Known for its modularity and widespread use, it's often considered essential to any gun collection. The essential things you need to run an AR-15 are usually always in stock during shortages, things like magazines and 5.56 ammo. Whether you're looking to buy a new AR-15 or buy parts for your modern sporting rifle, log on and for just about everything for the outdoors, shop MidwayUSA.com. Knives, machetes, saws, and shears, multi-tools, shovels, swords, axes, spears, hatchets, and tomahawks. If it cuts, snips, slices, or chops, Midway USA has it. Find great gift ideas in our huge selection of pocket knives and other everyday carry folding knives. Make a statement or create a family legacy with one of our top-of-the-line hunting knives. We've got a great selection of manual and electric sharpeners, too. For just about everything for the outdoors, check out MidwayUSA.com.
Every time I let this arrow go, I'm going to kill the deer and my season's going to be over. But I can tell you this, it doesn't happen like that. And I think maybe you get better at it, but
There's a little volume shooting aspect I need to consider here. That
yeah, like you may,
yeah,
and your season
it's
might
funny,
be
and
over.
I think that was part. Yeah, I'm gonna get a little hippy dippy here, or like I feel like there's an aspect to stick bow hunting that the elements above and Mother Nature kind of also choose that deer's going to die. Um, because it's got to be, I'm just going to call it 15 yards and it can't have picked you up. Like there's a little bit more of, you can't force it to die, if you will, versus I feel like with the compound, it's an efficient enough weapon. And part of you talking about like my volume, like maybe I need to release some arrows so I get some down. That's the reason I said I'm going to give it till all of November or a straight miss, and maybe I'm just beside myself. But like last year, I had a lot of doe encounters inside of even 15 yards, like 10-yard encounters, 4-yard encounters, and it was all in November. And I was like, God, this would have been really fun with the stick to maybe try and pull a couple of these off. I can think I had 4 does. I had a group. Literally, I was tying my shoe at the base of my tree to climb up, and I turn and there's a down log perfectly in between me and this group, and they are like 6 yards from me feeding and kind of just looping up. And I'm like, dude, like I had the stick bow. How sweet would it be to like snap shoot one of these at like 4 yards or something? Like it was ridiculous. But yeah, all those encounters were happening after I'd already picked up the compound for the year. And so this year I got to give that out. And yeah, I might have a day in November 6th, Byron shoots a doe. And you're like, that's not a big buck recipe, but that might be pretty fun.
But I think that's the key there, is that it would be fun. Like it's been a lot, the amount of like times I'm just up laughing in the stand or just like shaking my head, like even when I'm missing or all this stuff, like to be like, I had these opportunities and I was able to get an arrow off. Like I say that about like new hunters all the time. Like you got to pick your wins. Like, did you remember all your stuff? Did you get in clean? Did you not make any noise? Then did you see a deer? Then did you have a deer in range? Then did you get to, draw your bow? Did you get to shoot? And then all these things lead up to, you got a deer on the wall that you're, proud of or whatever, that you met your goals. But man, like you're finding out what I was finding out in the late season. Like getting drawn is hard. Like last year when I missed and got an arrow off, like I was elated because I had same thing. I had 8 deer around me inside of 30 yards and I missed at 13 because my limb hit the tree limb, but 0 branches, just hanging out there, 1 stick, 2 sticks high, something like that. Like it takes a lot to get an arrow off. And if you're going to, again, it's same thing. If it's going to be, 115, 100, whatever plus buck, that's like the guy that's never hunted before saying like, I'm holding out for a 140. Like you may never, you know what I mean? It's going to be a long time.
Yeah. It's funny. Dave and I have had a little bit of this conversation and we were saying, okay, let's say you adjust your bar from a Pope and Young to 100-inch bucks. And Dave goes, well, how many of those do you get in bow range in a given year? It's like, it's not that many more for us. In a given year, like last year, I think I had maybe 2 of those. Maybe. Might have just been the one that I can think of where the day I missed the bigger buck, I had one like at 4 yards right under me.
And now would you have been happy to have that deer with the stick?
He's a stick bow deer.
No, but I mean, telling this story now, would you have been elated? Would you have rather had that little deer on the wall with the stick, or been sitting here saying, well, I missed the bigger one?
No, I think because I was chasing something I had some history with, and like match set history. So that was 3 years of history. Like, yeah, I chose to play that game, and I don't get to play that game very often. And yeah, I don't think that one was a wrong deal.
Did that deer make it?
No, I saw him on YouTube the other day.
So So it doesn't matter.
But that might have been the deer I missed. Like, I had a pretty good encounter with a bigger buck. Can't tell in the footage if it was him or not. Bottom line, yeah. So I don't know, man. Like, we'll find out. If like you said, you just explained that first buck, like that feeling wasn't as I don't know, glorified as you thought it would be. We'll see if I get that same vibe, or maybe I'm just like stacked to the moon over shooting a doe with that thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it. Like, honestly, I don't think, because I'm thinking of it in terms of like, am I not giving credit to the animal or something? You know what I mean? Like, if I'm saying like, because by no means am I like, oh man, it just wasn't a big enough buck or something like that. Like, that buck could have been 150 inches, and the way that it played out, it just like the one in Kansas, like where I'm like, it just was like not that hard. Like that, I guess if you get to shoot at something 2 times in the same spot, like I feel like the world, like the universe glitched, like it doesn't work like that, you know.
That's funny. In the universe glitched.
Because I mean, we've been doing this for how long? Like, I mean, you hunt, you put a lot of work into like chasing these animals, finding these animals, and they're always like just out of fingertips grasp. Even when you have, maybe you have a gun, maybe you have a compound, and how hard it is to like accomplish that when you set out a goal, like your match set deer, right? Like you had the opportunity and it just didn't work. But that deer did not stand there and say like, come on, try it again. I dare you. Like, yep. And that's kind of like where I'm just kind of like at a loss with this, because, that's happened a few times now in the last couple of years. And I don't know. It just makes, it's just supposed to be, you're supposed to be punished for your failures, or, you're supposed to feel them, I guess,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe our sample size is too small here for you.
Yeah. I've got, that's the thing, is I've got the next 5 years are going to absolutely suck. This is like the first one's free. And then after that, like now we got our hooks in you, and like, you're going to be trapped.
Well, and could it be, what if like the reverse would have happened, where you miss the first 2 deer, you shoot out with the stick and then kill the third. And so now you've had a couple more like trials and tribulations, then got your success. Maybe that walk up is a little different.
Absolutely. I think that you feel validated, I think, in that. Like, because you're like, then you could at least say like, I adjusted and made I did these things that I needed to do. Like, I don't know. It's just such an odd scenario,
I also look at like, yeah, you got a mulligan, if you will, if that's what you want to call it. But like, how many hour arrows, not necessarily hours, because I'll step outside and shoot like 9-10 arrows and be done in like 2 minutes. But it's like, that's a lot of arrows cumulatively over the course of the last 18 months. That, did you kind of earn some of that, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I think that portion of it is like I don't know. I feel like that's cool. But I feel like I already knew that. Like, when I go out and shoot outside, or I'm shooting in my basement, and that's where it was like in between my ears. Like, I'm like, I know that I can hit that with this, but can I do it when the animal's there? That's the thing. And like, I felt pretty comfortable, and I think that that's kind of like where you're at. It's like doing it when the animal's there, and I don't have any doubt that you can do it. It's just you have to get the full draw, and then that's the difficult part. But now I feel more validated in getting those animals into that distance undetected. Like, I feel like that that's the win, because everybody can shoot deer in their, or shoot arrows in their basement. They can shoot in their backyard. They can shoot, they can be spot on at targets. And then, and I can say this like with gear, like you could have your gear completely dialed in and you could be able to go up and down the tree every single time. But if you can do that and there's no deer there, then it doesn't matter. And if you spend all your time finding the deer and you spend 0 time shooting your bow and you just miss them all, like that's your fault too. And I think that the total package is like being able to find the deer, like to be on the X. And like with a stick bow, that X is so much smaller. That to me is like where there's like validation, Yeah. The shooting is like, because that for like the first couple years that I had the bow, I felt like I was good enough to shoot, and I asked guys if I was good enough to shoot, and they said, "Well, only you will know that. Like it's how if you feel comfortable or not." And I think that's what took so long, and I think that's why kind of like that part feels easy. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Because obviously I'm an expert now. That's the thing.
Well, we go back to that.
And that's the weird part is that like, you've been doing it for this amount of time, but I think it's just, at least for guys out there that are listening, is like, you can put it all together. Like it isn't like this insurmountable feat, and it's a lot more fun. And I don't even think of it as like a built-in excuse that like, oh, I did it with a stick bow. Ha ha ha. I missed. Like, no, it's like everything had to go right up until like that arrow left the bow. And then when you miss doing that, it's like, man, I did everything else right. And then my dumb ass shot him in the face, like that's on me. But there's so many, like we talked about, there's so many wins that led up to that exact moment that is what makes it like fun, or makes you smile, or makes you want to go back.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm chomping at the bit after blowing that chance on Wednesday last week.
So for you with where you're at, what are the adjustments that you have introspectively decided that you need to make?
Yeah, I think I gotta anticipate that draw just a touch earlier. I think I'm trying to let them get into like, let's just call it 12, 13 yards. See the wide open vital side profile and draw and shoot right then. Versus I think I maybe need to draw those 2 to 4 steps earlier, and then they're in my window, and maybe it's only at that point I'm only holding that bow back for 3 to 4 seconds, which is totally doable. But that's where I think I know that's where I blanked the other day, and part of that was trying to make sure I wasn't about to blast a 4-pointer or a spike, because it was like dark 30. My camera didn't even pick her up, and a solo deer. Like that just was kind of odd. But yeah.
So where is your anchor? Like, what is your shooting style? Because like holding my bow back for 3 seconds would be holding it back for 30 minutes. Like I'm there when the fletchings hit my nose, mm-hmm. and I feel my shoulder squeeze. Like it's time. There is no hold. There's I'm going to get to like right here.
Hey everyone, this is Captain Steve Roger from Into the Blue TV. And as soon as I feel a little break from this heat, I know that hunting season is upon us. Actually, the first time I ever went hunting, a buddy took me. Wasn't my father or my grandfather. In fact, I took my father on his very first hunt. Well, Academy Sports and Outdoor Stores has everything to gear up for the field for less. Plus, you can shop a wide selection of ammo, shotguns, deer corn, rifle, feeder, game cameras, camo, and more from the brands you trust. Text HUNT24 to 22369 to take $20 off a $100 purchase when you shop hunting supplies at academy.com. Need a hunting license? Pick it up in store while you're shopping.
If you hunt enough, you learn the truth. What you seek speaks a language and knows it well. That's why every Primo's call for everything you hunt is made the right way. We sweat every detail so you get more out of every hunt, and nothing leaves our hand until we know it'll work in yours. Because we don't just make the world's best calls, we speak the language. Primos.
And start to engage my shoulders, and then I'm going to bring the bow down and release. And I was going to say, like, in that deer camp, I saw that you had like tagged like the Rise hunt. Like, if you had the Rise guys in camp, like they should have like given you the business, like giving you the 1, 2, 3 on like what you're doing and how you're doing it, right?
Yeah. No, that was a fun time. No, so as far as my anchor, like I don't have like anything crazy, but I do get that glove into like the lower part of my lip. I think I anchor a touch lower than probably most guys. But I also shoot it like I heard I think it's Ernie from Tether talk about it. He kind of shoots it like a guy shoots a jump shot, where like if in a jump shot, like you might be driving right and you pull up and shoot, or you might be driving left and you pull up and shoot. And so like some of those parts are not in those same angles every time, but you've kind of built rep ball to go through. And so, like, yeah, my stick bow game, I think, is a little bit more pure instinctive. And I think that's also probably why I struggle at a distance, but I'm able to like shoot funny, weird angles a little bit better and shoot seated. And I don't know, like that's how I built my skill set. And having only done this for, like you said, 2 summers, I really don't work a lot of 30-yard bombs. I feel very good at like 17, 18 yards. My eyes know that flight of that arrow inside of that range. But I just don't think ethically I should be lobbing 25-yarders. But yeah, you said, what's your hurt anchor? I was like, I don't have like that great a system as far as checks and balances. But yeah, I do practice occasionally like holding that bow or like leaning out from trees. Like I'll stand on the ground and have trees in front of me and like draw, hold, lean out and shoot. And I shoot kneeling a lot because I feel like base of the tree, I'm bound to have an encounter at some point.
Yeah, so I draw the fletching right to my nose, and like once it hits my nose, that's like the clicker, like it's like the time to send it. And if you watch those video clips, like that's exactly what I do. Like it's just like it's very instinctive of like the hold. But it's funny to say that, even because it was like on that deer that was out there at 21, like I know I told myself, I was like, shoot low, I was like, hold low, but I don't hold on at all. It was just like, send it lower. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I shoot, I'll walk outside and be like 30 and then send 3-4 arrows at my target. Just trying to get the idea of where is minute of deer at 30 yards. And that isn't necessarily like an ethical way to do it, but I also want to know, like, if I hold here, what happens? If I hold there, what happens? Like, I know what happens when I hold here at 20, 25, whatever, but I couldn't tell you what my point on is or anything like that. I'm not in that space.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it's been super fun. And like I said, I still have my trip to the UP going, and I got John and Frank coming with me. And so it's going to be very controlled. So I want to like try to video them or like buddy up and be like, all right, if it's inside of this, shoot, or I'm going to shoot, but if it runs out there and stops at 35, send it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Or if they're taking the trail that's closer to a 30-yard shot, hey, this is all you. Let's pull a switcheroo.
Yeah, absolutely. But I am perfectly happy like having that kind of fun hunt instead of like it having to be like, all right, because I think, especially like on out of state trips and things like that, when you're hunting with your buddies, and especially if you're like, oh, I want to do some videoing or something like that, like, yeah, we'll all self-film and do a really poor job at it, and still maybe one of us gets a deer, and that inevitably that person doesn't video it or something. It's like, why don't we just all go up there and have fun, maybe get something on video, and do a quality job. Take
Sure.
whatever is in our best favor, and draw straws. Like one guy's a videoer, one guy's the shooter, and the other guy's a solo hunter. Like pick out of the hat.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you're videoing today. Like, why not? So
Yeah, that would be fun.
But man, I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of walk through this, because like I said, you have the same, you're in the same spot as me with this whole
Maybe
stuff.
a year behind.
Well, no, I think that you just have a different, because you have one buck tag and you have opportunities at a bunch of bucks that, you have on camera or history with, or like, you have these kind of things picked out. It's difficult to like change your whole mentality to be like, all right, well, I'm going to go shoot something that I wouldn't be happy with just because I'm using this different piece of equipment. Where for me, I'm very equal opportunity. So,
Sure.
So, but for what do you have going on right now? You have like a few different ventures going on, I feel like.
Oh, as far as like hunting or outside of hunting?
All of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Hunting wise, like I said, I just did the XOP deer camp. That was a fun time. I got to video some hunts and do some stuff there. Hang out with some guys, do a real deer camp in a barn, yuck it up for a few days. The other like big aspect of my life, what was that? Maybe late July, early August, I launched we'll see what it does. I'm gonna call it a side business, but yeah, I decided, you know what? I was hanging out in the garage a lot, and I wanted a bar, and I wanted to have a beer in there, and I was like, man, maybe there's other guys like that. So yeah, I came up with a concept to have a garage bar, and essentially launched a company. But I'm not like raking in a bunch of sales or nothing, but trying to build a brand that way too, to I don't know, unite guys who drink beers in the garage.
Perfect.
But yeah, that's kind of been like a bigger project here the last bit of time, and some different content. Like it's a little kind of funny to like video cracking beers or cooking or grilling and talking other things besides hunting.
Sweet. And so where can guys find that stuff if they're like, hey, I like to drink beer in the garage?
Yeah. The website's garageguys-614.com. But if you go to like Whitetail Experience, you'll see I've linked over to the Garage Guys Instagram account, TikTok, whatever. But that's kind of given us an outlet to do some other videos besides deer hunting stuff. Dave's got, I've utilized Dave's barbecuing skills. So we got a couple cooking type recipes, barbecue throwing down, that kind of stuff.
Awesome, man. Well, like I said, I really appreciate it. And, keep us updated this season when you're at full draw, sending them at 12, 13 yards. So
that's right. That's the goal.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it.
Very good, Adam. Thanks, man.